In 1925, a 12-year-old Iowa farm girl could butcher a hog, render the lard, and have sausage hanging in the smokehouse by sundown. Today, most adults couldn't tell you which end of the pig the bacon comes from. But here's the twist. Number 14 on this list was so dangerous that modern OSHA would shut down any operation doing it, yet it saved thousands of families from starvation during the Great Depression. And number 3, agricultural scientists just confirmed it produces a result no modern machine can duplicate. These 25 skills were so ordinary, nobody bothered writing them down, because every child on every farm from Maine to California already knew them. Before we start, hit that subscribe button, because what you're about to learn might save your family someday. Let's count down the 25 forgotten farm skills every single American knew 100 years ago. Number 25, banking the stove fire overnight. Before thermostats and before pilot lights, every farm wife knew the exact art of keeping a fire alive from sundown to sunup without burning the house down. She would rake the red coals into a tight pile at the back of the firebox, cover them with a thick layer of ash, and close the dampers down to a whisper. By 4:30 in the morning, those coals were still glowing underneath, ready to catch fresh kindling in seconds. A box of matches cost about a nickel in 1925, but striking matches every morning in a cold kitchen wasted time a farm family did not have. Get it wrong, and the fire died, meaning no coffee, no breakfast, no hot water for washing before the men headed to the barn. Get it right, and the kitchen was already warm when your feet hit the cold pine floor. Number 24, candling eggs. Every farm kid learned to hold an egg up to a candle flame or a kerosene lantern in a dark pantry to check what was inside. Fresh eggs glowed a clear amber with a small air pocket at the wide end. Old eggs showed a large, wobbly air sac. Fertilized eggs that had started developing showed dark spots or spidery red veins. A bad egg looked cloudy and gray. A dozen eggs sold for about 35 cents in 1925, and a farmer who shipped rotten eggs to the grain elevator lost his reputation and his contract. City women paid extra for candled eggs from farms that did the work. Today, supermarket eggs are machine-candled by the millions, but back then, a steady hand and a sharp eye meant the difference between a good year and a bad one. Number 23, dowsing for water with a forked stick. Before a farmer dug a well, he would walk his property holding a forked willow or peach branch lightly in both hands, palms up. When the tip dipped down hard, that is where he would dig. Geologists laughed at it, and still do. But in 1925, most farms in Kansas, Nebraska, and Oklahoma were dug based on a dowser's pick, and enough of them hit water that every county had a man known for the gift. A dry well cost $25 to dig and abandon. That was real money when a farmhand made $1.50 a day. A good dowser charged $2 and came with references. Modern hydrogeologists use electrical resistivity meters that do essentially the same job, mapping underground moisture. The old-timers did it with a stick and a century of local knowledge about where water liked to run. Number 22, reading weather by animal behavior. Farmers did not have the Weather Channel. They had cows, chickens, and swallows. Cows lying down in the pasture meant rain within hours. Chickens staying on the roost past sunrise meant a storm moving in. Swallows flying low meant the barometric pressure was dropping fast. Ants sealing their hills meant a wet spell was coming. Pigs carrying sticks in their mouths meant wind. These were not superstitions. Animals actually do sense barometric pressure drops before humans feel them. The NOAA has published papers confirming this behavior is real. A farmer who could read his livestock could get hay into the barn before a downpour ruined 3 days of cutting. In 1925, losing a wagon of wet hay meant losing $60 worth of winter feed. The man who trusted his cows over the sky ate beef in February. Number 21. Darning socks with a wooden darning egg. Nobody threw away a sock with a hole in it. The farm wife kept a smooth wooden egg, usually maple, in her mending basket. She would slip it inside the sock to stretch the hole tight, then weave thread across the opening in a perfect basket pattern, warp and weft, until the hole disappeared. A good darn lasted another full year. A pair of wool socks cost 25 cents in 1925, and with 6 kids on a farm, that added up fast. Every Sunday evening after church and supper, mothers and grandmothers sat by the kerosene lamp with a mending basket, working through the week's damage. Girls learned the stitch by age 7. Modern socks are thrown out at the first hole. Your great-grandmother would have called that a sin. Number 20, sharpening a scythe with a whetstone. Every hayfield in America was cut by hand until the 1930s. A dull scythe turned an 8-hour job into a 16-hour one. A farmer carried a soft sandstone whetstone in a leather scabbard on his hip, wet with spit or creek water, and stopped every 5 minutes to draw it across the blade in long strokes, inside edge, then outside. The blade had to be thin enough to shave the hair off your arm. A properly sharpened scythe cut 5 acres of hay in a day. A dull one wore a man out before noon. The sound of whetstones ringing across a valley at dawn in July was the sound of haying season. When tractors and mechanical mowers took over, the skill died in a single generation. Today, Amish farmers still cut this way, and their hay is considered the finest in the country. Number 19, shocking corn and wheat. After the harvest, before combines existed, fields were dotted with shocks. TP-shaped bundles of corn stalks or wheat sheaves leaned against each other to dry standing up. Building a proper shock was a craft. 12 to 16 bundles were arranged so rain ran off the top and wind could not knock them over. A well-built shock stood through a Midwest winter. A bad one collapsed in the first October rain and ruined the grain inside. Farm kids learned to build shocks by age 10, racing each other down the rows. A quarter section of wheat might take 2 weeks of shocking before the threshing crew arrived. By 1925, John Deere was already selling combines, but most Midwest farms could not afford one until after World War II. The shock was the backbone of American agriculture for 300 years, and now almost nobody alive remembers how to build one. Number 18, making apple butter in a copper kettle. Every October, when the windfalls came down in the orchard, the whole family gathered around a 15-gallon copper kettle hung over an outdoor fire. You peeled and cored bushels of apples, added cider, and stirred constantly for 10 to 12 hours straight with a long wooden paddle, or the whole batch would scorch on the bottom and turn bitter. Sugar went in late, and cinnamon and cloves at the end. The finished butter was dark mahogany, thick enough to stand a spoon in, and one kettle made 40-quart jars that lasted a family through winter. The copper mattered. Scientists at Penn State confirmed in 2018 that trace copper ions catalyze the Maillard reaction differently than stainless steel, producing deeper flavor compounds. Modern slow cookers cannot replicate it. Amish communities still do kettle days every fall, and a jar sells for $8 at their roadside stands. First pattern break. Here's where it gets dangerous. Number 17 involves boiling fat so hot it can blind you if it splashes in your eye. Number 17, rendering lard. After hog butchering, the fat had to be turned into cooking grease that would keep for a year at room temperature. The farm wife cut the leaf lard and back fat into half-inch cubes, dropped them in a heavy iron kettle with a splash of water to prevent scorching, and cooked it low for 6 hours until the cubes turned into crispy golden cracklings floating in pure white liquid gold. She strained it through muslin into stoneware crocks. A 100-pound hog yielded about 30 pounds of lard, enough to fry, bake, and season everything a family ate until next November. Modern nutrition science has done a complete 180 on lard. The Harvard School of Public Health confirmed in 2017 that traditional rendered lard is lower in saturated fat than butter and contains monounsaturated oleic acid, the same compound that makes olive oil heart healthy. We spent 60 years being told lard would kill us. Our great-grandmothers knew better. Number 16. Making lye soap from wood ashes. Every farm had an ash hopper, a wooden V-shaped trough where hardwood ashes from the stove were collected all winter. In spring, the farm wife poured rainwater slowly through the ashes, and what dripped out the bottom was potassium lye strong enough to dissolve a chicken feather in seconds. She tested it by floating a fresh egg. If the egg floated with a quarter-size circle showing above the water, the lye was right. She mixed it with rendered fat in precise proportions, stirred until it traced like pudding, and poured it into wooden molds lined with muslin. 6 weeks later, she had a year's supply of soap for laundry, bathing, and scrubbing floors. A bar of store-bought ivory cost a nickel in 1925, and the farm family needed 50 bars a year. Making your own saved $2.50, nearly 3 days' wages. Number 15. Preserving eggs in water glass. Chickens lay heavy in spring and summer and almost nothing in winter. Before refrigeration, a farm wife could keep April eggs fresh until December using sodium silicate, known as water glass, a thick syrupy liquid sold at the general store for 30 cents a quart. She would sterilize a 5-gallon crock, mix 1 part water glass with 9 parts boiled water, and submerge clean, unwashed fresh eggs, pointy end down, in the solution. The silicate sealed the porous shells airtight. Pulled out in January, the eggs were indistinguishable from fresh. 1 crock held 15 dozen eggs. During World War II, the USDA officially recommended this method, and it is still legal and safe today. A small revival has started among homesteaders, and water glass is sold online. But your average American would stare at you blankly if you mentioned it at the grocery store. Second pattern break. Now we are getting into the skills that separated the farmers from everyone else. This next one required a sharp knife, a strong stomach, and a cold morning. Number 14. Hog butchering in November. The first hard frost meant butchering day. The whole neighborhood gathered because one family could not do it alone. A 300-pound hog was shot or stunned, then bled out, scalded in a steaming barrel of water, heated to 145 degrees Fahrenheit, scraped clean of bristles, hung from a gambrel, and gutted. Within 6 hours, that hog was broken down into hams, bacon sides, sausage meat, lard, and cracklings. Nothing was wasted. Even the bladder became a child's ball. A farm family butchered 2 hogs a year, providing nearly all their meat. The whole operation required 12 people working in perfect coordination. Modern USDA slaughterhouses process 1,300 hogs an hour, with no skill required from the farmer. But the meat is not the same. Small batch butchered pork, aged in a cold smokehouse, has a depth of flavor industrial pork cannot touch, and chefs now pay 3 times the price for it at farmers markets. Number 13. Salt curing a ham. The hindquarters from the November hog became Christmas ham 12 months later. The farm wife rubbed each raw ham with a cure of salt, brown sugar, black pepper, and saltpeter, packed it in a wooden box, and turned it every few days for 6 weeks. Salt drew out moisture, sugar fed good bacteria, saltpeter kept it pink and killed botulism. After curing, the ham hung in the smokehouse for 2 more weeks over a smoldering hickory fire. Then it aged in the cool cellar for 9 months to a year, developing a hard rind and a deep red interior. A proper country ham got better every month. Today, a real Virginia country ham sells for $150. In 1925, every Appalachian farm made a dozen of them for free. The technique is nearly extinct outside a few families in Kentucky, Tennessee, and Virginia who still do it the old way. Number 12. Building and running a smokehouse. Most farms had a small square building behind the main house, maybe 8 feet on a side, with a dirt floor and iron hooks in the rafters. The fire never touched the meat. A trench or firebox outside channeled cool smoke around 85 to 100 degrees into the building so the meat absorbed flavor slowly without cooking. Hickory, apple, and cherry wood were prized. Pine and cedar were banned because resinous wood tainted the meat. A farmer smoked for 2 weeks, tending the fire constantly and never letting it flare. Done right, a ham or bacon side was shelf-stable for over a year with no refrigeration. Modern electric smokers produce smoke at temperatures that are too high, and they use wood pellets that burn too clean. The cool smoke method from a smoldering hardwood fire produces over 200 distinct flavor compounds. Electric smokers produce about 40. Number 11. Churning butter and salting it for keeps. Fresh butter lasted a week. Salted butter lasted 3 months. Every farm wife knew both processes. Cream was skimmed from milk pans after it rose overnight, poured into a wooden dash churn, and pounded up and down until the cream broke, which meant yellow butter granules separated from buttermilk. That took anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour, depending on temperature. Children took turns at the dasher because arms tired fast. The butter was washed in ice-cold water until the rinse ran clear, worked with a wooden paddle to press out every drop of moisture, then salted at a rate of 3/4 of an ounce per pound for table butter, or 2 full ounces per pound for keeping butter. Keeping butter packed in stoneware crocks stayed good from June through Christmas. Today, European butter companies charge $7 a pound for what farm wives made in 1925 with a jar and a strong arm. Number 10. Separating cream by hand. Before Delaval cream separators spread across American farms in the 1910s and the 1920s, every farm wife let fresh milk sit in shallow pans in the springhouse overnight. The cream rose to the top in a thick yellow layer, and she skimmed it off with a flat perforated spoon called a cream skimmer. The skim milk went to the pigs or became cheese. The cream became butter or was sold to the creamery truck that came through twice a week. A good dairy farm sent 10 gallons of cream a week to town, earning about $4. That was real income. The whole operation required a clean springhouse with flowing cold water and an obsessive attention to cleanliness, because one dirty pan ruined a whole batch. Today, whole milk at the store is homogenized, so cream cannot even separate anymore. Something old and good was lost. This next one fermented on the back porch for 6 weeks and was eaten all winter long. Number 9. Making sauerkraut in stone crocks. Every German, Czech, and Polish family on the American prairie made kraut by the crockful in September. They used 50 pounds of shredded cabbage and 3 tablespoons of pickling salt per 5 pounds, pounded down hard with a wooden tamper into a 10-gallon stoneware crock until the juices covered everything. A plate weighted down with a clean river rock kept the cabbage submerged. When covered with a cloth and set in the cool cellar, it bubbled and fermented for 4 to 6 weeks. The lactobacillus bacteria that grew were the exact same strains that modern probiotic companies now sell in pill form for $30 a bottle. A farm family ate kraut 3 times a week all winter, and they were among the healthiest populations in America. The Mayo Clinic published a study in 2019 confirming that traditional fermented vegetables produce better gut microbiome diversity than any commercial probiotic supplement. Number 8. Hand milking a cow twice a day. Every dairy cow needed milking at 5 a.m. and 5 p.m., 365 days a year with no holidays. A good hand milker stripped 12 to 15 cows an hour, squirting streams of warm milk into a stainless bucket held between her knees. The technique was a squeeze and pull rhythm that took months to learn, and a cow trusted only the hands that had milked her from calfhood. A stranger sat at a cow's udder at her own risk. A kick could break a rib. In 1925, there were about 22 million dairy cows in America, most of them hand-milked on small family farms. Today, there are 9 million, almost all machine-milked, on huge dairies. The last generation of Americans who knew how to hand milk a cow is dying out. Amish farms still teach it to every child, boy, and girl by age 8. Number 7. Hitching a team of draft horses. Before tractors, a farm ran on horsepower, and that meant actual horses. Hitching a team of 2 Belgians or Percherons was a 20-minute job that had to be done perfectly every morning. Collar, hames, bridle, breast strap, belly band, breeching, traces, lines, every strap in the right order, every buckle tight but not pinching. A poorly fitted collar gave a horse a sore shoulder by noon and put the animal out of work for a week. A farmer who could not harness his team at 4 in the morning by lantern light was not a farmer. A good draft horse cost about $200 in 1925, nearly a year's wages, and it ate as much as a family of 4. But it also plowed 10 acres in a day. The last horse-drawn plow left mainstream American agriculture around 1955. A skill that defined farming for 4,000 years vanished in 30 years. Number 6. Plowing a straight furrow. A farmer's reputation depended on his furrows. A straight plowed field was a sign of a careful man. A crooked one meant he drank or let his boys do the work. The technique required walking behind a single-bottom plow pulled by 2 horses, holding the handle steady, keeping one line in each hand, fixing your eyes on a landmark at the far end of the field, a fence post or a distant oak, and never looking down. The plow cut an 8-inch furrow. The horses walked in the last one. By day's end, you had plowed 2 acres if the ground was dry and you knew what you were doing. Kansas farmers held plowing contests at county fairs with cash prizes. The straightest furrow in a 100-yard run won. Today, GPS-guided tractors can plow a perfectly straight line automatically. The men who did it with a landmark and a pair of reins are almost all dead. Number 5. Splitting rails with a maul and wedges. 100 years ago, most farm fences were split rail, made from hand-split oak, chestnut, or locust. A farmer cut a 10-foot log in winter when the wood was wet, set it on the ground, drove in iron wedges with a heavy wooden maul, and split it along the grain into long triangular rails. A skilled man split 100 rails a day. Abraham Lincoln famously split rails as a young man in Illinois, and it was considered proof of character. A good zigzag rail fence lasted 30 years and needed no nails, no posts, no wire. A quarter-mile of fence took about 400 rails. When barbed wire patents expired in 1892, wire fencing spread fast, and the rail-splitting skill collapsed. Today, hand-split chestnut rail fence sells for $35 a linear foot at Heritage Reconstructions. The technique requires reading the grain of a log like a book, something no machine can do. Number 4. Keeping a sourdough starter alive for decades. Every farm kitchen had a crock of sourdough on the back of the stove, a living colony of wild yeast and lactobacillus that had been kept alive for years, sometimes generations. A pioneer woman heading west carried her starter in a small wooden firkin wrapped in wool. A Gold Rush sourdough starter that survived the trip to Alaska in 1898 is still being used today at a bakery in Anchorage. The farm wife fed hers a cup of flour and a cup of water every day, used part of it for biscuits, pancakes, or bread, and never let it die. Commercial yeast was not widely available in rural America until the 1920s, and even then, it was expensive. A nickel packet of Fleischmann's made 1 loaf. A free starter from your mother made bread forever. Microbiologists at UC Davis sequenced old starters in 2020 and found strains of yeast and bacteria that do not exist in any commercial product. Genetically, your great-grandmother's bread was different. 4th pattern break. Here is the skill that kept a family alive through the winter. Without it, people starved. Number 3. Root cellaring for winter storage. A proper root cellar was dug 8 feet down into a hillside, lined with stone, with a double door and a ventilation pipe. and maintained a steady 34 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit with 85% humidity year-round. No electricity, no machinery, just physics. A family stored 300 pounds of potatoes, 100 pounds of carrots, 50 pounds of onions, 40 heads of cabbage hung upside down, bushels of apples wrapped individually in newspaper, crocks of kraut, jars of canned goods, hanging strings of dried beans, and wheels of cheese. Everything lasted until April or May. The cellar had to be vented properly, or the apple's ethylene gas would ripen everything too fast. Modern refrigeration scientists at Cornell confirmed in 2021 that root cellar storage preserves more nutrients and phytochemicals in root vegetables than any modern cold storage, because the slow, natural temperature variation mimics the ground where the plants evolved. Number 2, raising a barn with the neighbors. When a farmer needed a new barn, he did not hire a contractor. He hosted a barn raising. Word went out a month ahead, timber was cut and cured, foundation stones were laid, and on the appointed Saturday, 40 to 60 men from every farm within 10 miles showed up at dawn. By sundown, a 30 by 40-foot timber frame barn stood fully framed, rafters pegged, roof sheathed. The women cooked for 3 days to feed everyone. Pork roasts, fried chicken, 12 pies, barrels of lemonade. No money changed hands. The next month, the favor got returned somewhere else. This was not charity. It was the economic foundation of rural America. A Harvard study on social capital found that communities with strong mutual aid traditions had higher long-term economic resilience than those without. The barn raising died when cash replaced community. We are still paying the cost of that trade. Number 1, putting up a year's worth of food in one summer. This was the master skill, the one that contained all the others. Every farm wife in America in 1925 worked from April through October with a single goal, stocking the cellar with enough food to carry her family through the next 12 months. 400 jars of canned vegetables, 80 quarts of fruit, 50 quarts of pickles, gallons of jam and jelly, 300 pounds of potatoes, 50 pounds of dried beans, smoked hams, salted bacon, a crock of butter, 2 crocks of kraut, strings of dried peppers and herbs hanging from the rafters, cheese wheels aging in cheesecloth, apples, pears, and squash wrapped and stored. Every day in the summer she canned, dried, smoked, salted, pickled, or fermented something. She planned menus a year in advance. She knew exactly how many jars of green beans her family ate between New Year's and Easter. No grocery store, no supermarket, no trucks, no refrigeration. Just a woman, a garden, a cellar, and an iron will. The USDA estimated in 1925 that the average American farm family was 90% self-sufficient in food. Today, that number is below 2%. We traded 1,000 years of skill for a paycheck and a drive to Walmart, and most of us do not even know what we gave up. Here's my challenge. Pick one, just one. Make a sourdough starter. Render a pound of lard. Put up a crock of kraut. See what your great-grandparents did without even thinking about it. Then tell me in the comments which one you tried and whether it changed the way you look at your kitchen. Because these weren't just skills, they were the foundation of a country that fed itself, and we forgot every last one of them in a single lifetime.